In the swamps of the American South, a prehistoric predator came within reach of disappearing forever. The American alligator had survived ice ages, droughts, floods, hurricanes, and thousands of years of natural change. Long before highways crossed Florida and Louisiana, long before cities pushed into wetlands, alligators ruled the warm freshwater marshes, bayous, rivers, lakes, and cypress swamps of the Southeast. They were not just predators, they were ecosystem engineers. During dry seasons, alligators used their bodies, tails, and snouts to dig deep holes in the mud. These alligator holes held water after the surrounding marsh dried out. Fish, turtles, frogs, insects, wading birds, and small mammals depended on those pools to survive. One alligator could create a refuge for dozens of other species simply by carving out a depression in the swamp. Then humans found a market for their hides. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, alligator leather had become valuable. Their skins were turned into belts, boots, handbags, luggage, and luxury goods. Hunters moved through southern wetlands at night with spotlights and rifles, shooting alligators by the thousands. Boats returned loaded with bodies. Swamps that had once glowed with alligator eyes became strangely dark. The killing was relentless because it was profitable. Large adults were targeted first because their hides were worth the most. Removing breeding adults shattered local populations. Eggs were taken, nests were destroyed. Wetlands were drained for farms, roads, and development. The animal that had once seemed almost indestructible began vanishing from places where it had lived for millions of years. By the middle of the 20th century, the American alligator was in serious trouble. In 1967, under a law that came before the Endangered Species Act, the United States listed the American alligator as endangered. It was one of the clearest warnings the federal government could give. A species that had outlived ancient climate shifts was now being pushed toward extinction by hunting and habitat loss. The response was dramatic. Alligator hunting was restricted or banned in many areas. Interstate commerce in illegal hides was targeted. Federal officers and state wildlife agencies cracked down on poachers. Wetland protection became part of the recovery strategy. Instead of treating alligators as endless raw material, states began counting nests, monitoring populations, and managing the species as wildlife with long-term value. At first, many people did not believe it would work. Alligators grow slowly. Females build large mound nests out of vegetation and mud. Eggs depend on temperature and moisture. Young alligators face danger from birds, raccoons, fish, snakes, and even larger alligators. Only a small fraction of hatchlings survive to adulthood. But once the killing pressure was removed, the species responded. Females nested again in protected marshes. Hatchlings filled the edges of ponds and sloughs. Young alligators spread through canals, lakes, and wetlands. Adults reclaimed territory where they had been missing for decades. Night surveys that once found empty water began reflecting dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of red eyes back at the spotlight. The comeback was so strong that it changed the way wildlife officials thought about conservation. The American alligator proved that enforcement could work. It proved that a species could recover if the main cause of decline was identified and stopped. It proved that state and federal agencies could coordinate across a wide region and bring a heavily exploited animal back from the edge. In 1987, the United States Fish and Wildlife Service declared the American alligator fully recovered and removed it from the endangered species list. Only 20 years had passed since the original listing. The same animal that had been disappearing from the swamps was now one of the greatest recovery stories in American wildlife history. Today, alligators are common across much of their southeastern range. In Florida, Louisiana, Georgia, Texas, South Carolina, Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, and North Carolina, they remain symbols of wild wetlands and southern identity. But the most surprising part of the story is that recovery did not end with protection alone. In several states, regulated alligator management became part of the conservation model. Legal harvests, tagging systems, nest surveys, farming programs, and strict monitoring replaced the chaos of illegal killing. Landowners who once might have drained wetlands could now see value in keeping habitat intact. A living swamp with alligators became more valuable than an empty one. The system is controversial to some people, but it helped destroy the black market that had nearly wiped the species out. When legal, traceable, regulated products replaced illegal hides, poaching pressure dropped. Wildlife agencies could track populations and adjust rules instead of chasing criminals through the marsh after the damage was already done. The alligator also brought other species with it. Alligator holes became survival pools in dry seasons. Their nests created raised mounds used by turtles and other animals. Their presence shaped fish, bird, and amphibian communities. As alligators returned, the swamp regained one of its most important architects. The recovery was not magic. It was law, enforcement, habitat, monitoring, and time. It was also a reminder that ancient does not mean invincible. The American alligator had survived for millions of years, but it almost could not survive a few generations of unregulated human demand. Once America stopped the slaughter, protected the habitat, and managed the species seriously, the animal did what it had always known how to do. It bred, it spread, it waded in the water. And slowly, across the South, the eyes came back to the swamp.